Don't mess with Egyptian queens. Hello and welcome back to the Doctor Who Marathon. I'm your host McEdam, and today we're going to be talking about the Series 7 story, Dinosaurs, on a Spaceship, written by Chris Chibnall and is directed by Charles Metstein. Now, this is the second story in Series 7, and when this story aired, it was actually a splitting of the fan base kind of episode in a way. Nothing really controversial happens per se in the story itself, but in terms of popular opinions of it, what the general consensus is, it seems to have split the fan base at the time. There were those people who absolutely loved it and really had a blast with this episode, and then there are an equal amount of people who disliked the episode, citing it as a boring or at the very least dull episode. And I think that's mainly due to two factors. One, the controversial ending, which we will get on to, which I think I'll tackle more when we get to the ending and we get to that. But the second is actually what this episode kind of represents, because most people go into Doctor Who because it's a big franchise, a sci-fi franchise. Most people go into Doctor Who wanting, something with like a gritty kind of storyline, with something with a lot of character, a lot of emotional beats, something which has like a meaning to it, the subtext of the matter. But the story, it either does not have that, or that's not the main focus of the episode. The main focus of this episode is purely to entertain its audience for 40 minutes. And that's it. That's all it's asking you to do. Just enjoy me whilst I show you myself, the episode. And I think that could be one of the big reasons why this episode was kind of split, because if you listen to the opinions on each side, it's mainly due from how interesting the flow of the narrative is, whether it gets dull or whether it's exciting. And there's nothing really of subtext, there's no hidden meanings, there's no dark themes that the story is trying to represent. It's literally dinosaurs on a spaceship. You can't get much more simple than that. Now, I'm going to actually do something a little bit different here, because I'm actually going to state my full opinion on this. I actually really, really enjoyed the episode. I remember when the episode aired, and after watching it, I just had an absolute blast, and was kind of surprised by the whole internet's, not the internet, well, everybody's kind of reaction to it. In fact, I know a lot of people who actually really don't like this episode. One person I actually know, it's become a kind of, not a running gag in my group of friends, but there's this one person who just cannot stand this episode, in a sense, which I just find personally amusing. So this episode, this vlog of mine, is mainly going to be about me trying to justify my opinion. It's not going to be, it might not sound fair, but it's my opinion. I'm biased to my own thoughts and feelings on the episode. So I'm by the hopes at the end of this vlog, you might not agree with me in terms of whether you actually enjoy the episode, but I hope that you can understand where I'm coming from if you are on the other side of the argument. That is all I'm asking. But before that, I want to talk about a little bit something which I forgot to mention in my last vlog, Asylum of the Daleks, because Series 7, Part A, the first half, introduced a new title sequence, which it's not really a new title sequence, it's a new one, it's the old one, the one from 2005, the Matt Smith one. However, it's been modified to a degree, with each episode of Series 7 Part A, each having slightly variations on this kind of logo. Gone is the actors' names come into the screen in this blocky rock font and then come into the screen. Instead, it has this kind of strange particle effect. Gone as well is the TARDIS smashing into a locked position, as you have a massive Doctor Who logo. Instead, what happens is that we get the logo kind of fade in, and each episode the logo changes to fit with the episode. For example, in this episode, the Doctor Who logo's texture is now scales to represent the dinosaurs, and vice versa. And then the logo kind of like fades into the TARDIS, which is kind of at a distance, and then goes around. And each episode has this filter on it, which changes the colour of the vortex. And it's quite literally a filter, as in like everything changes, even the TARDIS to a degree. There's also this kind of strange like blur effect on the sides, giving the vortex a kind of dreamy atmosphere. This is easily one of the most stupidest decisions for the intro. It is gone right bottom. If you count series 7A, because like I said, it's not really a new logo. It's the same intro as series 5, only with a lot of variations and alterations. But if you count this as a separate intro, in my opinion, it is easily the worst intro of the series. It just looks horrible. And comparing it to one previous, the one that was used for series 5 and series 6, like, why? The logo specifically is the one that really bugs me, where it's tiny compared to the rest of the screen. It doesn't have that impact that the previous version had. And the filters just look horrible. They look so, it looks like, do you know on your phone you have those apps and you have those filters and everything just goes like really blue, really green, really red, like, or really purple, like that kind of thing. It's like that, and it just feels cheap. It feels really cheap. It feels fan-made. It's really bizarre. Of course, this was to set up a new intro that would be introduced in the Christmas special and as well in Series 7 Part B, which was planned to be the new intro from then on out. However, we'll get onto that when we talk about that intro. But for now, we're talking about the Series 7A intro, and personally, it is just, it's pants. There's no way to describe it. It's absolutely pants. But yeah, now on to the episode. The story actually starts off with the Doctor, who has Queen Nefertiti. He's had this little adventure with Queen Nefertiti, a famous Egyptian queen who, if you don't know your history, she was married to King Untep, if I remember correctly, and she is known in history as, all records of her to a degree, to certain points, just completely disappeared, as if she went missing. So it's a big mystery in history. And this episode kind of explains what's going on. And the Doctor gets a message and he takes Queen Nefertiti with him. And we learn that the Indian, I keep thinking it's the Indian unit, but it's not. It's the Indian military force from the distant future. Essentially, they've tracked a massive spaceship, this massive sphere-like ship, which is on a collision course to Earth. And essentially, they need they friend the Doctor, and they want the Doctor to go in to investigate, and hopes that they can set it off course and they can preserve it. If not, if it gets to a certain range, they're going to send missiles to it. So in a sense, Earth is in no danger in this episode, which is really strange, but the episode has a unique quality to it. And the Doctor decides he's going to get a group of people, including Amy and Rory, our main companions of this era, and basically go and investigate with now a handful of people. This kind of seems like a precursor to Chris Chibnall's era as showrunner, because you have the big ensemble cast, with the Doctor trying to set up a team with Amy Rory, Queen Nefertiti. We also get introduced to Riddell, and also as well, in the story, we get introduced to Rory's father, Brian. Brian is played by Mark Williams, who's better known for playing Ron Weasley's father in the Harry Potter films, and he's one of Britain's famous comedian icons. He has that kind of dopey persona about him, and he's just an absolute blast watching it in this episode. One of the big issues which a lot of people I've heard about is the idea of this assembled cast, and I do understand why. You've got Amy, Rory and the Doctor, which is already a kind of a big crew, but you also introduced 3 more characters into a single episode, as well as, you got this massive concept with this ship. And, I do understand that, and I do feel like, even as somebody who really likes the episode, this idea could have easily benefited from the story, being a 2-parter, easily. However, what I disagree in the opinion ball bit is people are like, why are they being introduced? And I kind of understand why a lot of people might not understand why have Riddle, Queen Nefertiti, and Brian in this episode. The Doctor, Doctor doesn't usually need like a team like this. Why get them introduced? The Doctor seems to go out his way to get Riddle, and also as well, Queen Nefertiti, he just kind of lets her join his teams at the start. But I think when we get to the end of the pre-credit sequence, in which we essentially learn that there's dinosaurs on this spaceship, this ancient spacecraft, with you can see this place is neglected. There's a lot of cobwebs. The walls have also become like almost stonish to a degree, as it seems to be completely abandoned with webs everywhere and stuff. And when the Doctor sees the dinosaurs, he's just full of glee and ambition. But as well, with the idea of the team, the Doctor just is just like, I'm on a team now. I love the bit where the Doctor's just like, this is the gang. I like a gang. This is the new gang. Yes, I have a gang now. Yes, I love that little moment. And I think this is something which I actually really like about Chris Chibnall's writing, specifically for the 11th Doctor. I think Chris Chibnall really gets the Doctor here. Say what you want in other stories, especially, later down the line in his own era. But in this episode, he captures what makes the Doctor, especially in the classic series, so enjoyable to watch. Because we kind of, with the Russell T Davies era, and especially with the Stephen Moffat era, you do kind of forget that the Doctor travels through space and time because it's fun. Matt Smith is Doctor Who. He's not going out for an adventure to fight monsters and to try and find villains, shall we say. He's not there to try and right wrongs to agree. He will right wrongs when he sees them, but the reason he travels is because he just loves traveling. And Matt Smith here really gets Chris Chibnall's kind of this idea of the Doctor. There's so many scenes in which the Doctor just gets introduced to new settings, new environments, and it's just an absolute ball. Mainly because the Doctor loves travelling. There's nothing deep about it. There's nothing dark subtext to it. It's just the Doctor having an absolute blast. Now, as well with the teams, I actually really like the team's idea. I love how at the start as well, the Doctor doesn't realise he's even taken Brian, Rory's father, with him. And we have a funny exchange in which the Doctor's just like, why did you bring him? It's like, you technically just kind of kidnapped us, Doctor. It would have helped if you give us a warning like any other friend that you're coming over. And And basically what the episode does is it strictly splits the team in two. It splits the team between the Doctor, Rory and Brian, and Amy with Riddle and Queen Nefertiti. And what I really like about the story is that the story, each grouping has something to say with the characters. Yes, the story, like I said, idea is fun, but it doesn't stop it from being, a really developed story. Let's talk about Amy, Queen Nefertiti, and Riddle to a degree. The idea of this team is essentially egos. You have Queen Nefertiti, who is a queen who has accomplished so much in her life, and basically she has become famous in a sense. Amy and Riddle know her just by her reputation alone, and easily one of the weakest things, I think everybody can kind of agree, is that Queen Nefertiti, in terms of the crew, she is the weakest one. She's mainly, most of the script, especially in the first half, is essentially everybody just going, wow, you're amazing, you're fantastic. And that's really it to her as a character. But I do like Rhian Steely's performance as Queen Nefertiti. But yeah, that's not really much to say. Now, Riddle is a British huntsman that at the time the Doctor found him was in Africa. He's like this hunter, like a hunter character, and he's basically got this massive ego towards him. He's kind of a walk-in innuendo, as Amy puts him at one point. Again, a very simple character, and the idea is that he's got this whole high and mighty with himself, but nobody seems to care or have any interest of him. When they compare in like each role is there, when Riddle is just like, surely you must have heard of me, and Amy's just like, nope. Maybe history isn't kind to people who slaughter animals for no reason, and to a degree, some people consider him a kind of annoying character because that seemingly is to do with him. However, there's a lot of great moments I find with the character. I love how sure he is with himself. There are some great small moments with him, like when they first see the dinosaurs. There's these two, I can't remember what they're called, these two particular dinosaurs in the spaceship, and Riddle just comes up with the idea. It's like, I got a knife, I can just stab one in the throat. I don't know about the other one, but I can easily get one of them if we're attacked. And when the Doctor's just like, don't fight them, they're harmless, and it's like, and then Riddle's just like, yeah, so are we, or something like that. And you kind of feel why he's so sure of himself. He seems someone he has kind of pushed himself to this idea. He basically loves a challenge, and there's so many great moments with him, and with him flirting with Queen Nefertiti, how they kind of got this kind of flirting situation. Some of the best lines actually come from him, and what really nails it, what makes this performance so great, he is played by none other than Rupert Graves. Yes, Rupert Graves is in this episode, and he absolutely nails it. He's just so charming. He's just so lovable. His first lines when he's talking about the Doctor, and he's like, Doctor, where did you go? I had 2 belly dancers. I had to deal with 2 belly dancers all by myself. Not that I couldn't manage. And he gives this really smirky smile of the Doctor. But right as soon as he said that, as soon as that like bit of dialogue, and as soon as Rupert Graves gave that performance, I absolutely fell in love with it. And this all culminates again with Amy, who she's kind of got like an ego herself. And there's a great moment where Queen Nefertiti's asking who Amy is, and when she's like, "Are you a queen?" Amy's just like, "Yes, I am." and they got these smaller bits with her and Rory. They're talking about Rory. It's like and the Doctor, and the three of them it's kind of like the ego and the super ego. You have two sides of the extreme, and Amy is kind of the one in the middle to a degree. She is very sure of herself. She's very confident. She's very to the point where she's kind of over her head, just like Riddle. However, she does know her own worth, and she does have a great, idea of herself, like Queen Nefertiti, and that kind of dynamic and their plot line where they discover that the ship is actually a Silurian ark, which is a nice tie-in to continuity, connect everything continuity, and there's also maybe even a reference to the fact that Chris Chibnall has previously written for the Silurians in Cold Blood and Hungry Earth. Is that, yeah, Hungry Earth. So I do actually really enjoy those scenes, and I don't feel like they're any dull or any boring. But let's take this down to the other side, where we got the Doctor, Rory, and Brian. Mainly, Doctor has kind of his own little arc when we get introduced to the main villain of the story, which is easily one of the best aspects of the story. So let's talk about Rory and Brian, because Rory has had this massive kind of story character arc. He's probably the most developed character of the Stephen Moffat era. He's a character who starts off very nervous, very unsure of himself, and he kind of is in the background in Amy's life, and he kind of feels that, and he kind of knows that. However, throughout Series 5 and Series 6, he has gained this confidence in himself, and he has, thanks to his travels with the Doctor, has been able to stand up for himself, has been shown that, he's a great man in himself. He has the potential to do great things. But Brian, who kind of considers himself a much more traditional man, like there's a great moment with a trowel, the Doctor asks them to dig, and Brian just kind of gets a trowel, when it's like a very funny humorous moment, but it's nice because it's also stating something about the characters where Brian is just like, yes, of course I've got a trowel. What kind of man doesn't carry a trowel? Which kind of puts, not that Brian hates Rory by any stretch of the words, but you can clearly tell by their relationship in this story. A great way of setting this up is actually right at the start when we meet Brian, and he's on this ladder trying to fix their bulb in their house, and he tells Rory not to shake the ladder, whilst he says to Amy that her holding the ladder, her side is perfect like always. So clearly the idea is that from Rory's point of view, he's either gone unnoticed or his confidence is not seen by his family. His family can still consider him a kind of like an average guy kind of person. And it's also kind of as well as tying to his job, because if you know anything about society, male nurses, because nurses is considered a feminine kind of job. So there's kind of this kind of something to say there, where Rory, he has this kind of feminine job, and his family kind of see him as this. I try to make it sound like they absolutely hate Rory. That's not the case at all. But you could clearly tell that there's this. They don't really see eye to eye to, essentially. And this story has some really great moments where the story kind of stops for a moment and breathes and allows us to develop us with his characters. The Doctor, Rory and Brian, they get teleported to the engine room, which is actually a beach. Great way to save on special effects, and it's the same beach they used to film the beach at the end of Doomsday, for fun fact. And there's a great moment where Brian is like, put it on your Christmas list. Rory's like, I'm 32, I don't have a Christmas list. And the Doctor just goes up, I do! Again, establishing the fact that the Doctor is just having an absolute ball here. And, there's just really interesting dynamic here. Especially later on, they get introduced to the villains. And essentially what happens is, as a threat one of them injures Brian, and the story kind of stops for a moment, takes a slow breathing moment, so that Rory can show off his nursing skills per se to fix Brian's soldier. Soldier? Soldier. I can't pronounce it. That's really shoulder. And you can kind of see in their performances, like Brian's just like, oh, thank you. That really is. Thank you, Rory. Thank you. As you kind of seeing like the benefits of Rory's profession as a nurse. So there's a lot of, that's just really cool to see. And that is just, it's not like a massive part of the story. There's not it's not like a big bombastic, storyline in the story, but it's just a nice little narrative that plays around throughout the episode. There's also some really funny moments with Brian, especially where there's a dinosaur that they meet, and the dinosaur basically gets really close up to Brian, and the doctor's wondering if he's got any vegetable matter, to which Brian replies, only my balls, and he basically explains that he has golf balls which are covered in grassy residue. So, yeah, that's just, I don't know, I just really love that. It's just really funny. And the reactions of the Doctor and Rory are just priceless, absolutely priceless. This episode is absolutely funny. But let's get introduced to the main thread of the story, and is one of the reasons why I really do enjoy this episode, and that is the dynamic between the Doctor and the villain, Solomon, played none other than Bradley Bailey. Is it Bradley Bailey? David Bailey? I can't remember how to pronounce his name. The guy who played William Hartnell in The Adventure of Space and Time. I should have wrote it down. That's on me. I do apologise. But before that, we get introduced to the villains essentially through these giant two robots played by the people who created the Peep Show. And everybody, including myself, agrees the robots are the worst thing about this episode. They are absolutely annoying. The humour around them just really doesn't work, and they come off as a very terrible threat. The costume designs are absolutely phenomenal. The effects in this story are actually very well done. Especially the CGI of the space going towards Earth. It's really great, especially the dinosaurs as well, which are created by both CGI and practical effects, like giant model works, animatronics, and it just really gives the story a great cinematic feel, because Series 7 was the series which was designed as movie posters. Basically, Series 7, you had the title and the movie poster idea come first, and then the narrative was kind of based around that. This, I kind of feel like, you can kind of feel that in this episode, but I feel like here it actually kind of works because it brings out this kind of fun enjoyment of the story. But let's get introduced to Solomon. The first time we actually meet him, he's this very injured, but he's a very charming lad. He kind of smiles at the Doctor. He's got the Doctor kind of at gunpoint, but he doesn't seem too threatening at first. He smiles. He's just like, oh, don't worry about the scan. It's a mechanical fault. Don't worry about it. But anyway, I need your help, Doctor, because of my leg. I'm injured. One of the dinosaurs bit me, and now I'm injured. And the story kind of starts off with the Doctor and Solomon kind of really getting along with each other, and the Doctor kind of sees that this person he's kind of been put in a situation, and he kind of feels pity and sorry for him until the Doctor asks because he's not really a doctor in that sense, but it's just like what is it in for me, for a sense, to which Solomon kind of gets, I don't know, the Doctor asks Solomon who is he, what is he doing on the ship, to which Solomon replies with getting the robots to shoot Brian, which is the scene I was talking about earlier, which quickly puts the Doctor really on the defensive. And this is where the story gets really interesting. We essentially learn throughout the scenes of the Doctor and Solomon that the Solomon is this he's basically a pirate. He's a space pirate, a space bounty hunter in a sense. And he basically, his ship was crashed. He got onto this ark. He befriended the Silurians and was just, came for repairs and stuff until he found out the cargo, dinosaurs, an extinct race of dinosaurs on the ship, to which he's seen that, and he had decided that he will take each Silurian out of cryogenics and jettison them off the space, leaving a trail of bones and blood in space. And here's the thing, Solomon might come off purely by dialogue as this kind of one-dimensional character who, he's just pure villain in the sense, he does stuff, he kind of gloats about the evil he has done, but Bradley Bailey's performance just really knocks it out of the park. You get this feeling that he, in his mind, has this kind of entitlement complex. And what the story does incredibly well here is that when the Doctor and Solomon are on screen together, they're kind of the opposite of the same coin. Basically, Solomon is the Doctor if the Doctor didn't travel because it's fun, didn't travel because, he just wanted to, he just really enjoys seeing all these new things, but rather took advantage of his ability to travel through space and time and used it for profit, used it for his own personal gain. And that's just a really great idea, and the story does some really great moments. There's a great scene in which the Doctor's discussing with Solomon, and essentially Solomon holds all the cards. The Doctor knows that Solomon, if the Doctor even said, wants to basically lash out, Matt Smith's performance becomes very quieter. He doesn't become as quirky as he usually is when the Solomon is basically on screen, which gives Matt Smith this really, because this episode he's mainly been really, really quirky. He's probably been one of the most quirky in any episode he's ever been until episodes like The Rings of Akaten. Until scenes with Solomon where he just, that quirkiness kind of goes away and he just really is confrontational. However, he can't really push it here because Solomon has all the cards. He's got these robots who can easily kill his two friends just outside the door. All he has to say is one word, and he knows that Solomon has no regrets. In fact, he seems to he doesn't even see the issue of him jettisoning them. When the Doctor asks what happened to the Silurians, Solomon just explains to the Doctor without even a care, without even trying to hide it. And the Doctor's face, he's just gone quiet. But there's this great moment where the Doctor essentially realizes that Solomon plans to take this ark to a planet in which he can sell these dinosaurs and make a massive, massive profit out of all of these dinosaurs. However, the Silurians have kind of put a counter command into their ship, which will head it straight back to Earth, which is why the ship is heading to Earth. And you can see that the Doctor in some way is so gleeful about it. He's in himself, he's like, yes, the Silurians fucking got you. But the Doctor kind of just smiles and he has this kind of, he's won the argument in a sense. He might not have won the battle yet. He might have still, doesn't have any cards on his plate. But he takes every moment he can to basically to put that into Solomon's face. The Doctor really just wants to lash out and just, because this guy basically represents everything he despises. And the Doctor, it's just so goddamn interesting. There's halfway through the story, the stakes kind of change because Solomon scans the ship and he finds something extremely unique, which kind of takes the story away from the dinosaurs to a degree. Essentially, Solomon has learned that Queen Nefertiti, a very famous historical figure, is on the ship, and he demands that he will let everyone go if the Doctor hands over Queen Nefertiti, to which the Doctor, of course, is adamant, not anything completely against. But Queen Nefertiti teleports herself in the same room and gives herself up. And there's this really great moment where, oh for God, that's a great. Let's also talk about Saul Metzstein's directing in the story. He really gives these characters despite the fact that most of the characters don't get a lot of screen time. Brian, Riddle, Queen Nefertiti, and Solomon are all characters that are introduced here, and there's not much screen time because there's so much going on. You never feel like nobody gets enough screen time because Metzstein's directing really gives these characters a real presence in the narrative, especially the scene where the Doctor and Solomon are talking about Queen Nefertiti, and the camera's got this kind of low angle looking up, and you just see the two men like dominating the screen, and there's that scene essentially that Solomon is just like, do you not believe that I will kill anything that gets in my way? And basically to prove it, he shoots one of the dinosaurs that the Doctor, Rory, and Brian have befriended throughout the episode with a lot of fun, quirky moments. And that's kind of a big shock. For the story that's mainly focused on fun, there is a darker scene in here in which they kill an innocent dinosaur creature, showing how just ruthless Solomon is. And Queen Nefertiti basically gives herself up. And there's a great scene in which Solomon holds her up to the wall, and you can tell that that's what I was talking about, with Solomon having this kind of he kind of has this, not an authority, but he feels entitled, as he says like he enjoys when his victims have spirit. It makes it fun for him to break them once he goes and sells them, as he teleports them off the ship. And the Doctor then comes up with this idea where he takes the communication system, not communication system, but a homing beacon for the ship, to which the Indian army, the Indian military force, have basically set out their missiles about to destroy the ship. And the Doctor, he found a way using Rory and Brian, basically Rory has proven himself to Brian, and then at the end of the story, Brian also kind of shows his own worth, showing that he is also, like Rory, destined for greatness as they both fly the ship. As the Doctor gets this homing beacon and puts it on Solomon's ship, as he teleports, as basically his ship is about to leave, but the Doctor teleports there in time so that he can put the homing beacon on the ship and save Queen Nefertiti. And this is the bit I was talking about earlier. One of the controversial moments, which kind of split the fan base in a sense, is this ending. Because essentially what happens is the Doctor lets Solomon die. The Doctor didn't need Solomon to stay on the ship. The Doctor could have easily rescued him, and Solomon was harmless. He was defenseless at this moment. He couldn't pose any threat at this point. And Solomon basically begs for help, and not begs for help essentially. We'll get on to that. Now, this kind of seems like, if you just go in on a complete base reading of this, deals out a character for the Doctor. However, let's look at the scene more carefully. The Doctor and Solomon, they basically are the two sides of the different coin, like I said. Like, the story is, with them two, is that Solomon is the Doctor who doesn't do the travelling for thing. He does it for greed, he does it for all these bad intentions. And essentially what Solomon does is, at this moment, in his last moments, where he could redeem himself, he could just beg for help. No, what Solomon does is he bribes for his life. He's like, Doctor, if you rescue me, I can give you anything you want. I can give you a share of a cut of money, whatever, or something. Just please let me live. And the Doctor at that point sees that Solomon is a lost cause. Solomon, there's no way of redeeming that in the Doctor's eyes. The Solomon is a character who he kind of puts everybody up to his standards. You know, he thinks that he can just bribe the Doctor into helping him. He can bribe himself out of this situation, feeling that, you know, which kind of in his mind justifies him kidnapping the Queen Nefertiti and slaughtering the Silurians and kidnapping the dinosaurs. There's so much bad things that the Doctor knows about Solomon. That's only things the Doctor knows about. And basically, when Solomon's got his cards down, when he's at his lowest point, he still bribes, he still tries to basically assert this kind of idea on everyone else. And the Doctor at that point sees him as a lost cause and leaves him to die. So in that kind of sense, especially when, you know, the Doctor fights monsters and aliens all the time, he kind of sees him as a lost cause in that point. To the point where the Doctor just doesn't even seem to be remotely interested. He kind of takes a little bit of enjoyment of the fact that Solomon is going to be left here to die, which is really strange, but I do actually really like this more darker aspect of the Doctor, but that's not the main focus of the Doctor's character here. It's mainly his him being this really lovable, just really enjoying adventure compared to Solomon's character, and that is the dynamic of them, and that's the main narrative of the Doctor here. And that essentially is the end of the story. The Doctor brings back Riddle to his own timeline and puts Queen Nefertiti with him, basically explaining what happened to Queen Nefertiti. If you didn't know your history, it is kind of strange how the story doesn't actually bring up the real life history. Because if you go by this story, if you didn't know anything about her, that just seems really weird that the Doctor just leaves her in, I believe it's 1910. I could be wrong, and I think it's 1910 or 1902, where Riddle's from. And Rory and Amy basically are like, actually, we're going to go home, which kind of sets up like this whole idea in Series 7 that at this point, Amy and Rory are kind of split between the home life and the Doctor life. But before that, you probably get one of the most beautiful little moments in Doctor Who, in which Brian, he's just like, before we go, take us back, I just want to see one thing. And the Doctor's at first is just like, okay, that's strange. I get a request from Rory's dad of all people, but okay. And we get this absolutely stunning shot. Probably one of my favourite shots in any episode of Doctor Who, where you have Brian having a picnic, sitting at the doors of the TARDIS, just looking out on Earth through space. It's just, and the camera angle, it's so quirky, it's so British quirkiness. And then you've got that final shot of Amy and Rory looking out at space with glee, and you see the Doctor in the back looking at them, kind of getting this feeling that their time is almost up. It's really powerful stuff. It's really great. And that is essentially Dinosaurs on a Spaceship. It's not deep. It's not got any dark themes. It does have dark themes, but it's not like the main focus of the episode. The story is mainly focused on enjoyment, popcorn enjoyment, but doesn't mean the story doesn't have anything gripping to do. You know, you've got the pairings of Amy, Riddle and Queen Nefertiti, Rory and his father, and then Doctor and Solomon. So many great moments. There's a lot of great lines in this story. One of my favourites is, you need a man with ambition and a very large weapon. And Amy is, at one point, Amy's like, I'm worth more than 2 men. You could join if you want. Put it, like I said, put it on my Christmas list. Tell me where we are now. That bit cracked me up. There's so many great little moments like that. I wanted to get more broader strokes of the story, but there's so many little moments that I just love, and it's mainly due to the performances. But I hope that I might have not done a really good job, but I fingers crossed hope that you as an audience member understand. You might not agree whether you actually like the episode or not. You might not like the episode, that's completely fine. I think I have pointed out moments where I understand why people don't like it. Like, it should have been 2 parts. It should have been 2 parts to flesh out the 3 extra team members in the story a bit more. Solomon, I think he actually did, has had a lot of good moments with him. But for the other 3, they could have had an extra episode dedicated more fleshing them out. The dinosaur aspect kind of disappears by the 3rd act. And like I said, the story isn't really focused on anything deep or thought-provoking. It's mainly just for fun. So I kind of understand why certain people who might like certain more meat to their story might get bored by this. But I just want to, my hopes is in this vlog is for you to understand where I'm coming from and why I personally really enjoy Dinosaurs on a Spaceship. It's an episode which it's one of the episodes I just keep coming back to. When I'm in the 11th Doctor mood, it's one of the episodes I always watch when I'm in that 11th Doctor mood. So yeah, please put in the comment if you can whether I did a good job at explaining. That's the main thing I'm trying to focus on, is whether I did a good job at explaining my viewpoint. If I haven't, please let me know, and I'll try to express my opinion more in the comments below if you're interested. So that's Dinosaur on a Spaceship. So join me next time as the Doctor goes to the old Wild West as an alien is basically pitting an entire little village as hostages. So join me next time for A Town Called Mercy. And I'll see you next time on the Doctor Who Marathon. Ta-da! Also, I just want to point out the fact that for me personally, again, might not agree or not, that we've had 3 episodes back to back, written by Stephen Moffat, which haven't been so good. The Wedding of River Song, The Doctor, the Widow and the Wardrobe, and Asylum of the Daleks. And then the first episode, which isn't written by him, and I personally really enjoyed, is written by Chris Chibnall. I don't know if that means anything. I just thought it was interesting to point out. So yeah, see you next time.